Unspoken human language. Spoken human language is primitive, very stripped down, very devoid of all context and meaning. It was done intentionally so. It is not only another tool of separation and division amongst ourselves, from one language to another, where we cannot communicate, just like borders and everything else. But it is also a tool that separates us from ourselves and from each other, where each one of us has a definition and an interpretation of what the word is, or uses a dictionary definition that is on a single only, a single possibility. This is the rigid definition and nothing else. Yet that forgets the interpretation of the individual, the biases and filters of the individual, based on the body of experience of that individual. What is the meaning of the word, whichever word, for me, based on my entire history of who I am? Biases and filters, meanings and interpretations, that's one element. There's a lot of lost in translation when people speak English or any other language to each other, and what they're trying to communicate is somehow lost, and misinterpretations arrive and arise, and relationships suffer, and all kinds of conflict ensues or can ensue. There is also the lost in translation, or the lost, where words are stripped of all context and meaning of what the communicator intends to communicate, and then of course the biases and filters of the receiver. But how often do we want to say something, mean to say something, and so we say it, and then we spend an inordinate amount of time defining, redefining, putting context on to what we just said. It is time to say no more to these tools of separation, re-engage telepathy, and then we can communicate in an instant, in the blink of an eye, the entire hologram of the communication, the context, the content, the meaning, and everything else that goes along with it, in pure clarity. And it is received. And then there is no loss in translation, because the recipient receives what you are trying to communicate. And whatever that is, does not contain emotions or value judgment, but the message being communicated from you to another about what that is for you. It is yours, composed of many things. It's an explanation of spoken language, and it is powerful, but it is a double-edged sword as well. A bit of understanding on language, on communication, on sophistication, about nature, about primitive nature, and how to bring in truer sophistication into our communications and come onto the same page on what we communicate, so that we clearly communicate to the recipient, and the recipient clearly knows what you intend to communicate. And then one proceeds from there. Food for thought and consideration.